Do you know what the European troops do in their military bases in African countries? Well, they have the entire region under their control where they can go anywhere, to any village they want, bring any woman or girl they want, and exploit her. Yes, they come with the excuse of training the African military or fighting enemies, but all they do the entire year is disturbing acts like these. But it does not stop here. Whenever they are blamed or arrested, they are protected, and that's why no one has been ever punished for their action. The victims are always suppressed. Not anymore, because the Samburu women in Kenya have risen and filed hundreds of cases against British troops raping them. How does this continue to this day, and what's the heartbreaking story of the Samburu women? Welcome to a new episode of Black Afric Diary, a channel where we talk about Black African history, culture, arts, and civilization. It's a place where you will see the real picture of Black Africa, its stories, and the events defining it. In this episode, we will expose how the British military stationed in Kenya rapes the Samburu women whenever they want, without any fear. Let's get started. The Samburu women belong to the larger Samburu community, a semi-nomadic pastoralist group that lives in the dry and rugged northern regions of Kenya, mainly in Samburu County. This region is located in the Rift Valley province north of Mount Kenya and is known for its vast plains, scrublands, and mountain ranges. The Samburu people share close ethnic and cultural ties with the Maasai, and their territories are some of the most remote and sparsely populated areas in Kenya. The land itself is a mixture of savannas, rocky hills, dry riverbeds, and plains dotted with acacia trees. The climate is harsh, with daytime temperatures often exceeding 30 degrees Celsius, and water scarcity is a constant challenge. One of the key water sources for people, livestock, and wildlife in the area is the Ewaso Ngiro River, which plays a vital role in sustaining life in this dry region. The Samburu people, particularly the women, live in tight-knit communities that center around their traditional pastoralist lifestyle. Cattle, goats, sheep, and camels are at the heart of their existence, providing food such as milk, meat, and blood, as well as representing wealth and social status. The Samburu are semi-nomadic, moving with their herds in search of water and pasture during the dry seasons, although changes in environmental and economic conditions have led many families to settle in permanent villages. Their homes, known as maniatas, are small, dome-shaped huts made from local materials like wood, mud, and cow dung. These huts are built around a central boma, or cattle enclosure, which highlights the importance of livestock in their culture. The maniatas are often enclosed by thorny fences to protect both the community and the animals from predators such as lions, hyenas, and leopards that roam the region. However, no challenge is more disturbing and heartbreaking for the Samburu people, especially the Samburu women, than the presence of British troops in northern Kenya. For decades, the British Army has used parts of northern Kenya, including areas near Samburu land, as training grounds. One of the main regions utilized for military exercises is Laikipia County, located just south of Samburu County. Since Kenya's independence, the British Army Training Unit Kenya, called BATUK, has conducted live fire drills, survival training, and other military operations in these areas. The proximity of the training grounds to Samburu communities led to frequent interactions between British soldiers and the local population, especially women, with often devastating consequences. The rape of Samburu women by British soldiers is one of the darkest chapters in Kenya's history. Over a span of more than 50 years, from the 1960s to now, hundreds of Samburu women were sexually assaulted by soldiers stationed at nearby British military bases. This widespread pattern of violence not only reflects the abuse of power by foreign forces, but also exposes the failures of both Kenyan and British authorities to address these atrocities. But how did it all begin? Well, Kenya, a former British colony, gained independence in 1963, but British military forces maintained a presence in the country, particularly in the remote northern regions. These areas were deemed ideal for military training exercises, due to their harsh, arid environments, similar to conflict zones British soldiers might encounter abroad. For the Samburu, who had lived in these regions for centuries, the British military presence was a major disruption to their way of life. The British Army conducted extensive training exercises on Samburu land, including live-fire drills, often with little regard for the safety of the local population. Over time, these exercises led to numerous encounters between British soldiers and Samburu women and girls. As the years passed, reports of sexual violence began to emerge. Some estimates suggest that as many as 600 women were raped. These assaults were often brutal, and the soldiers who committed them faced little or no accountability. Many of the victims were young girls, and the rapes frequently resulted in pregnancies, forcing the women and girls to bear the emotional, physical, and social burdens alone. All this continues because British soldiers are often viewed as untouchable by the local authorities. The Kenyan police and government, either unwilling or unable to take action, rarely intervene to stop the abuse. Many of the women, especially those from remote villages, had no access to the justice system or legal support. In addition, the cultural stigma surrounding rape in Samburu society made it difficult for victims to come forward. Many were ostracized or shamed by their communities, compounding the trauma they experienced. For the victims, the impact of the rapes went far beyond physical violence. In Samburu culture, women who are raped are often seen as dishonored or impure, making it difficult for them to marry or reintegrate into the community. The attacks not only violated their bodies, but also destroyed their social standing, leaving them with limited futures. The children born as a result of the rapes also faced significant challenges. Many were rejected by the community and labeled as half-castes or outsiders, which further deepened the suffering of their mothers. For many years, the sexual violence inflicted on Samburu women by British soldiers went largely unnoticed by the rest of the world. During this time, the British military continued to operate in the region without facing any consequences for the actions of its soldiers. They would train, and as a recreation, they would enter the Samburu village, or sometimes wait to find any Samburu woman alone to rape her. It wasn't until the late 1990s that these cases of rape and sexual assault began to draw attention, thanks largely to the efforts of human rights groups and local advocates who fought to bring the issue to light. Despite this growing awareness, the British government was slow to respond. Even when they finally acknowledged that these rapes had occurred, their response was inadequate and lacking urgency. A key reason these abuses continued for so long was the Status of Forces Agreement, SOFA, under which British soldiers operated in Kenya. This agreement granted them legal immunity from prosecution by Kenyan authorities, making it nearly impossible for the Kenyan justice system to hold soldiers accountable. They could do whatever they liked, knowing they were off limits. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. The British government insisted that any crimes committed by their soldiers should be prosecuted under British law. In practice, however, this meant that few, if any, cases were ever pursued. The lack of accountability only deepened the suffering of the victims who saw their attackers walk free without facing justice. That's when a change began. In 2003, a group of Samburu women took matters into their own hands, filing a lawsuit against the British Ministry of Defence. They sought compensation for the rapes and the devastating impact these crimes had on their lives. This marked the first time that the British government was forced to confront the full scale of the abuses committed by its soldiers. However, the legal process was fraught with challenges. The British government initially denied responsibility, dismissing the allegations as either false or exaggerated. After years of legal wrangling, the British authorities eventually agreed to a settlement, but for many victims, the outcome was far from satisfying. Although the legal case helped bring attention to the issue, it did little to address the systemic power dynamics that had allowed such atrocities to occur in the first place. The British military continued its operations in Kenya, and similar accusations of misconduct surfaced in the years that followed. For the victims, the compensation provided by the British government felt inadequate. The trauma they had endured was profound, and no amount of financial restitution could erase the emotional and social scars left by the assaults. The rapes of Samburu women did not just affect the victims, they tore at the fabric of the entire community. In Samburu society, women are central to family life and community stability, playing key roles in caring for children, managing livestock, and maintaining households. The sexual violence inflicted upon these women not only violated them personally, but also destabilized their families and the larger social structure. At this, even the West-dominated Amnesty International could not stay silent. Along with other human rights groups, Amnesty has consistently reported on issues related to sexual violence, impunity, and the lack of accountability. In cases like that of the Samburu women, Amnesty has pushed for justice and reparations for victims, shining a spotlight on the systemic failures that allowed these crimes to go unpunished, particularly in post-colonial and conflict settings, where military personnel operate with considerable power. Amnesty has documented numerous instances of rape committed by military forces in conflict and peacekeeping situations, and in doing so, it has shown the widespread problem of impunity when foreign soldiers commit these crimes. Under these conditions, when rape is sanctioned and there is no family support, the Samburu women have only one option: to go to the women's village, their last hope. This village is called Umoja Village, a great community created exclusively for women. Umoja, which means unity in Swahili, was founded in 1990 by Rebecca Lolasoli and 15 other women. Together, they built a space where women could live free from oppression, abuse, and brutalities. What started as a small sanctuary has grown into a thriving community, offering a safe haven for Samburu women who have been raped, abandoned, or subjected to other forms of abuse. For some Samburu women, one of the most traumatic experiences was the sexual violence inflicted by British soldiers during military exercises. These assaults left deep physical and emotional scars. Many of the women who were raped became pregnant, and the resulting children were of mixed race, born to Samburu mothers and British fathers. In the conservative Samburu culture, a woman's worth is often tied to her family, marriage, and adherence to societal norms. A woman who was raped, especially by foreign soldiers, was seen as damaged. This stigma was even more severe when these women gave birth to mixed-race children, as their appearance served as a visible reminder of the violence they endured. Many husbands left their wives, unable or unwilling to accept a child that wasn't their own, particularly one who bore the physical features of a foreign assailant. These women were unfairly blamed for the assaults and forced to carry the burden of shame alone. Their families disowned them, and their communities turned their backs. With no support and nowhere to go, many of these women sought refuge in Umoja Village, where they found others who had endured similar tragedies. Together, they began to rebuild their lives. Umoja Village is unlike any other. It is a women-only community, governed and inhabited entirely by women. No men are allowed to live in the village, with the exception of the women's children. This creates a safe, nurturing environment where women can heal from their trauma, free from the threat of further violence or judgment. For the Samburu women who had been raped and rejected by their communities, Umoja became a place of sanctuary. Many brought their children, the products of the violence they endured, to the village. These children, who faced discrimination outside the village because of their mixed race and the circumstances of their birth, found safety within Umoja's protective walls. In the village, these children are not judged by their origins or their appearance. One of the primary ways the women of Umoja sustain themselves is through livestock farming. Livestock is essential to the Samburu way of life and is a key source of both food and income. The women of Umoja raise goats, cows, and other animals, using their products, milk, meat, and more, for their own sustenance or to sell for profit. This work is not just about survival, it's about empowerment. In traditional Samburu villages, men control the livestock and women have little say in how these valuable resources are managed. But in Umoja, the women are fully in charge. They manage the livestock themselves, deciding how to care for the animals, when to sell them, and how to use the income they generate. This self-reliance has allowed them to create a community that can sustain itself without depending on outside help. The money they earn from livestock sales supports the village and funds important needs, like education for their children. In addition to livestock, the women of Umoja have tapped into their rich cultural heritage to create another vital source of income: beadwork. Samburu beadwork is known for its elaborate patterns and cultural significance. Samburu women traditionally make necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and belts, using colorful beads arranged in designs that reflect aspects of their culture, such as age, social status, and identity. The women of Umoja have honed this craft and turned it into a sustainable business. They sell their handmade beadwork to tourists who visit the village, providing a steady source of income. Over the years, Umoja has gained international recognition, and visitors from around the world come to the village not just to purchase jewelry, but to support the inspiring women who have rebuilt their lives. These tourists are often moved by the courage of the women and see the jewelry not just as souvenirs, but as powerful symbols of resilience. While Umoja is a women-only village, the children born to the women, many of whom were fathered by British soldiers, are the exception. These children are raised in a nurturing environment that shields them from the harsh judgment they would face outside the village. They are cared for collectively, with every woman in the village contributing to their upbringing. In most cases, the children are the only males living in the village. However, as boys grow older, they are encouraged to leave Umoja and start their lives outside the community, ensuring that the village remains a sanctuary for women. The women of Umoja take great pride in raising their children with strong values, providing them with an education, and ensuring they have the skills and opportunities needed to succeed in life. For these women, Umoja is not just a village, it is a lifeline. It is a place where they can live with pride, raise their children in safety, and work towards a better future. Umoja stands as a powerful example of how women, even after experiencing trauma and abandonment, can reclaim their autonomy, fight back against oppression, and build meaningful lives filled with hope and purpose. Isn't it true that the authorities in Kenya should be strong and punish all the British troops who raped the Samburu women? Who do you think is to blame more? British troops or the Kenyan authorities who allow this to happen? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on the heart-crushing stories of the rape of the Samburu women. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.